Hey, it's Katie and welcome back to my booktube channel. For today's video, I'm doing something a little bit different. This is going to be a vlog throughout the entire month of October because I have a very ambitious TBR and I'm trying to read 31 books in 31 days. So I thought I would bring you guys along this journey with me. And I am basically just going to be updating you guys on the books that I'm reading and my thoughts on them and whether or not I think they are good for like good fall reads and festive reads. So I feel like it's going to be really fun. Hopefully it is enjoyable for you guys as well. And this first clip I am actually filming in the middle of October because I had already filmed some stuff throughout the beginning, but the hard drive I had it stored on basically just stopped working one day and I have no access to anything that I already filmed, which was super sad, and I now have to refilm everything. So once I got over that, I decided to finally sit down and do it. So even though it is already October 17th, technically, let's just pretend for this clip that it is October 1st or the first week of October so I can go through the first 6 books that I read this month and give you guys some of my thoughts. So the very first book I read in October was Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber, and I actually have a full review of this up on my channel already, so I will link that for you guys. But obviously I love this one so much. Stephanie Garber is one of my favorite authors and it is such a great book. It's so magical. I would definitely say it fits fall, but you can read it at any time of year because it just feels like a fairy tale. It is absolutely amazing. This takes place in the same world as the Caraval trilogy, but you don't have to read the trilogy before reading this because it is the first book in a new series. And I have like a billion tabs because I love it so much, but it's so good. I read it in one sitting and I highly, highly, highly recommend this. I will probably talk about that so many times. So I'm just gonna cut myself off there. I followed that one up with Ace of Spades by Ferida Abike-Imide. I really hope I'm saying that name right. I tried really hard to look up a pronunciation, but I'm terrible with names, as you guys probably know. But this takes place at an academy where these 2 students are getting these like rumors spread about them. Everybody keeps getting these texts that are kind of like blackmailing them sort of and revealing all of these secrets that they don't want anybody to know. And so they are determined to figure out who is doing it and to stop it. And it gets really, really intense. This is a thriller, I'm pretty sure. And it gets way more intense than it sounds. It sounds like just this high school like bully story, but it goes way deeper than that. This book involves a lot of racism and homophobia and a lot of really tough topics to read about, but it is one of those things where I feel like it's very educational at the same time and it's a very important read. It was very hard to read some of these scenes and some of the things that people were saying about them, and this entire, the entire system that you get to experience in this book is so demented and messed up. It's definitely a book I think everybody should read. And it gets very, very intense. So I was not expecting that, but it was very enjoyable. And I can't remember what I gave this book. I think I gave it 4 stars. So I definitely think it fits fall as well. Like I said, it is a thriller and it deals with a lot of tough topics. After that, I moved on to House of Salt and Sorrows by Erin A. Craig. And this is one I've had on my TBR since the beginning of the year. And I am glad that I finally read it. I feel like it definitely fits the vibe of fall. It is like a horror 12 Dancing Princesses retelling and basically takes place in this, I don't know if it's on an island, but it's basically like a seaside setting. And it's this girl whose sisters keep dying and she's trying to figure out why it keeps happening, and she believes that there's some creatures or like a monster doing it to her family, and she's determined to figure it out. I had really high hopes for this one, but I ended up only giving it 3 stars. I felt like there was so much potential, but I honestly spent the majority of the book really, really confused by the magic, and I also didn't really feel connected to any of the characters. There's only like one sister that I genuinely cared about out of all the ones that we got to meet, so I think it's definitely a good book. It's just not one for me. I wasn't really invested, and I ended up just really confused even by the end of it. So as cool as I think it probably is to a lot of people, it didn't really work for me. Oh, I almost forgot to show you guys before I show you the next 3 books that I read that first week. I want to show you guys this kind of bingo board that I made. I don't think bingo board's the right word, but I basically made this, I used like this dry erase board calendar, and I wrote all the books on my TBR in each of the little boxes, and so as I'm reading them, I am filling them in. So I have read 17 books. I think I said today was the 17th. It's actually the 19th, so I'm 2 books behind, but I'm more caught up than I was a little bit ago, so we're getting there. But it's been really fun to have a visual of all the books I'm trying to read. There's actually 35 on here instead of the 31, so I do have some options, which is really nice. And I also have a TBR jar that I put all of these in, which has helped me pick my next read. But it's been really fun to fill it in and just see a visual of how much progress I made. So I wanted to show you guys that. And also, along with the 31 along with the 31 books, I'm also trying to do 31 Halloween activities with my fiance. So obviously we're kind of behind on that as well, but I will also be trying to update you guys on some of the fun activities we've been doing. We still want to go to like a pumpkin patch and go to like a corn maze and build like a gingerbread haunted castle mansion thing. So there's still a ton of stuff to show you guys, so I wanted to let you guys know that's something else that I'm doing, because other than that, reading is pretty much all I'm going to be showing you this month, because that's all I'm going to be doing. 31 books is a lot to try to read in just a month. But let's jump into book number 4 for this month, which is One of Us is Lying by Karen M. Mcmanus, and you guys have probably heard of this. It's like a high school murder mystery, and basically these 5 students end up in detention together, but only 4 of them end up leaving alive. And so the 4 of them end up as suspects, and everybody's trying to figure out what really happened to the boy who died. I honestly really enjoyed this one as well. I don't really read a lot of murder mysteries. I've read quite a few now this month, but before this month I haven't really read too many, so I really enjoyed it. I feel like it was really fun to kind of feel like I was back in high school again and get to see the relationships between these characters and see how people treat them after they became suspects. But it was really fun trying to solve the case as well. I had a little bit of a hunch that ended up being true, but for the most part I didn't really know the answer to the case, so I honestly really enjoyed it, and I can see why people really love this. These next 2 were the books that I read in my Books I'm Scared to Read reading vlog, which I will link for you guys, but I'm not really going to say too much about these because I basically said a ton about them in that vlog. But those books are Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas and The Invisible Life of Addy Larue by V.E. Schwab. Also, I realized that this is actually called House of Earth and Blood, but I've just always called it Crescent City, so that's what I mean when I say Crescent City. But you guys obviously know what both of these books are about. I feel like I'm not really needed to give a synopsis of these. That was not English. I feel like I don't need to give a synopsis of these. But I really, really loved Crescent City. I gave this one 5 stars. I cannot wait for the sequel. I flew through this book even though it's like 800 pages. It's the longest book I've ever read, and I could not get enough of it. I did not want it to end. The romance is great. The action is amazing. I love our main character. Bryce is just so fun to read about. She's so badass, but also, I don't know, I just feel like I want to be friends with her. and I loved seeing her and Hunt interact. It's really cool. The world building is phenomenal, and I was really worried that this would be really, really slow paced and way too descriptive for me, but that was not the case. I was genuinely invested in every single page. Now, when it comes to The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, I was very disappointed by this. Well, I don't want to say disappointed because I think it is a very good book. It is just not for me at all. It is very slow paced, and I am not good at reading slow paced books. I need some good banter or some action scenes or something, and this did not have any of that. I also really love romances that have a lot of, like, not spice, but a lot of, like, banter. I need, like, enemies to lovers. I need something fun, some kind of tension. And this didn't have any of that, so it didn't really work for me. It's also very, very descriptive writing, and usually I end up skimming descriptive passages, but this whole book was basically a descriptive passage, and it was just really hard for me to get through. There were elements I enjoyed, but overall, it was just really hard for me. And also, I kept jumping back and forth between the past when she first, became immortal and was experiencing all that stuff, and present where she is meeting, I can't even remember his name, meeting the guy that didn't forget her, essentially. And it was fine, but I feel like that really made the story feel even slower because, I don't know, the chapters just felt so long and slow, and just when I was getting into what was happening, it switched to the different time period, and I really didn't enjoy it. I really struggled to get through this, if I'm being honest, and I feel like a lot of people are going to be mad at that, but I feel like I need to be honest with you guys. So I think I only gave this 3 stars because, like I said, it's not a bad book. It is just not for me. Okay, so that will be the end of this very long clip. That is the only part that I really lost footage of, so now everything will be more authentic and in the moment, so hopefully you guys enjoy it, but let's just jump into the next clip. Hey guys, I can't remember the last time I updated this vlog. I'm pretty sure it's after I read Crescent City and The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I have read 3 more books since then, so we are up to 9. It is October 11th. I probably should have started with that. So I've read 9 books so far, and oh my gosh, it's not the 11th. It's the 12th, I think. I don't know what day it is. Okay, it's October 12th, and I've read 9 books so far. So I'm still a little behind, but we are catching up. And the first book I read was Mooncakes by Suzanne Walker and Wendy Zhu, I think. I'm terrible with names. I'm so sorry. I probably should have looked that up. But this is a super cute graphic novel, definitely perfect for Halloween, and this follows a girl who is a witch, and she actually also has hearing aids, so I really loved the character rep with that. And then we also have some great character rep with our other character, who is a werewolf, and they use they, them, their pronouns. And I thought that was really cool. I really enjoyed the representation in this book. That was one of my favorite elements. I honestly didn't know anything about it before picking it up, so it surprised me in the best way possible. And this is super fun because there is like this, it's not a demon, but it's some kind of creature that our werewolf friend, I can't remember anybody's names, that they are trying to get rid of and protect the world from, essentially. And so they end up reunited with our other main character, and she's like, oh, we can totally help you with that, don't worry. And so these 2 friends end up trying to go on this journey together, and what I love about it is that this cover makes it seem super cute, and it is adorable. There's also some romance through this. It's also an LGBTQ plus romance, so that's really fun. But what I love is that the illustration style is so cool because we have scenes, I'm trying to find a cute scene. Well, we have some spookier scenes like this in the woods, which is super creepy, but then we also have some gorgeous scenes in like this garden with some really pretty magical creatures. I'm really trying to find a scene for you guys. Here's some of the characters I was talking about, these little creatures right there. This was super cute. I can't remember how many stars I gave it. I think I gave this 4 stars, but I would highly recommend this if you're looking for a festive graphic novel. After that, I ended up reading Kingdom of the Cursed by Carrie Maniscalco, which is one of my most anticipated releases of the year, and I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. It's so fun, and if you're looking for a fantasy romance series that focuses on some paranormal creatures and some like darker elements, but also has mystery in it, I would highly recommend this. This is the second book right after Kingdom of the Wicked, so definitely read that first because, like I said, this is the sequel. But if you already read Kingdom of the Wicked, please go pick this one up. It's so good. I actually already filmed a full book review on this, so I will link that for you guys, and if you would like to check it out, please go ahead and do that to see more of my thoughts, but so good. This one is new adult, whereas Kingdom of the Wicked was young adult, so there is some smut in here, and it is so good. Also, Wrath is my #1 book boyfriend, and he just got so much better in this book, and I love him so much, so that's reason enough for you guys to pick this one up. And then the other book that I got to is Undead Girl Gang by Lily Anderson, and this was one that was on my radar since last Halloween that I never had a chance to read, so I was really excited to pick this one up, and it was a nice break from the like darker, more fantasy heavy elements that were in Kingdom of the Cursed, because this is like paranormal and it's also like a murder mystery, but at the same time we also get some like contemporary elements. It takes place in a high school, essentially, like with these high school kids, so it definitely feels like a much younger audience than Kingdom of the Cursed, so it was a much easier read for me and a very nice break. Before I get too much into this, there are mentions of suicide in this book, and I will also be mentioning that right now, so if that's something that is a trigger for you, please go ahead and skip ahead in this video, and also don't go read this book because there are mentions of it throughout. So I will give you a second to go ahead and skip if you need to. But this book follows Mila, who is a witch, and her best friend Riley is found dead, and that's right after 2 of the popular girls in school were found dead as well, and everybody thinks that this was a suicide pact between the 3 of them, and so they're all ruled a suicide and nobody really looks into it, but Mila knows that Riley would have never committed suicide. She wasn't really going through anything like that, and she would have known if there was something wrong with her best friend, so she is determined to figure out who murdered her best friend, and she decides that the best way to do that is to bring her back from the dead. And so she casts this spell and tries to bring Riley back, but she ends up bringing all 3 of the girls back, and she ends up having to try to rein them all in and keep them from running around town and doing whatever they want before they end up going back into the ground and being dead again. They are only back for, I think, 7 days, so she has a limited amount of time to try to figure out what happened to them and who murdered them. I just really enjoyed the writing in this book because there are so many lines that are just so blunt, which really matches the paranormal elements, but then you also have the girls that come back from the dead that are just so funny, like just the way they are talking about what happened to them and the things that they're going through is just really humorous, so I really loved the balance of those 2 things, and this book was just a lot of fun, and I was really, really happy that I enjoyed this because it was on my TBR for a while. At this point, I'm honestly not sure if I will be able to read all 31 books I'm hoping to read this month. I'm trying really hard. I'm hoping to read at least 1 more book today. It'd be great if I could read 1 more and a graphic novel and kind of catch up a little bit more, but we will see what happens. Hopefully the next time I update you guys, I will be a little bit closer to my target goal for books. But we will see how it goes. I am really trying, and I'm also really loving some of these books. I'm reading books that I typically would not pick up, and I'm having a lot of fun with that, so hopefully you guys are too. So it is now October 19th. It's been a very long time since I last updated this. I've read like 8 books since I last saw you guys, but the reason I haven't wanted to update is because I lost all of the footage from before that last clip, which I mentioned in the intro, so I was a little discouraged. Wasn't really sure if I wanted to continue this video, but I decided that I definitely should stick it out and that I think this is still a fun video that's worth filming, so I wanted to come back on here. But I have a lot of books to catch up on, so I'm just gonna do like half of the ones I'm behind on because I also filmed like 2 videos prior to this, so hopefully that made sense. But I am now up to 17 books total, and it's day 19 of the month, so we are kind of catching up. We're getting there. I'm hoping to read another one today, so that means I'll only be 1 behind. So hopefully this goal is still manageable. But the first book I read after that last clip was A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik, and this is a dark academia novel that takes place at this school called the Scholomance, I think is how you say it. But it's really cool because this book has maps. I wish it wasn't a library book so I could see the entire map, but there's a different one in the back of the book too, which I don't think I've ever seen in a book. Usually it's the same map if it's in the front and the back, but that was really cool. I feel like you guys have probably heard about this. It was really popular the year that it came out, and I thought it was pretty good. I definitely enjoyed the dark academia element. I feel like I want to find more books that involve dark academia. I think it's perfect for fall, but I ended up really skimming a lot because these chapters are so long and they're just like blocks of text. Like the paragraphs are so long. There's barely any dialogue in this book, and apparently I've learned through this book that dialogue is very important to me, and it gives a nice break from these like chunky paragraphs. So it was definitely hard for me to get through those parts. I ended up skipping a lot. But I still enjoyed this book enough. I thought the atmosphere was really cool and creative. I could really picture this school essentially, and the monsters were really cool and kind of crazy. It would have been fun to see some like drawings of what some of these monsters looked like. I think that would be really cool. I'm not sure if I want to continue to the next book at some point. I enjoyed this one enough, and it did leave enough of a cliffhanger that I might continue it, but it's not really a necessity personally. After that, I moved on to something lighter because that was a very dark, creepy book. And that book was Brightly Woven by Alexandra Bracken, and the art was by Kit Seaton. And this is actually a middle grade graphic novel, but it's just so fun and festive that I had to pick it up. And it's super cute. It follows a girl named Sidel, and she is a weaver. And one day this wizard just shows up at her house, and basically he is trying to stop this secret war between kingdoms from happening. And he says that he needs her to travel with him on this journey because he needs somebody to mend his magical cloaks, and if they're not mended properly, he doesn't have the magical abilities that he needs to successfully make this journey. So she ends up going with him on this adventure, and she also ends up going through a lot of self-discovery as well, but it's also a super tiny graphic novel. So it's a super quick, easy read. It was really fun, and it's also very colorful, so I really enjoyed that, and it's actually more action-packed than you would think, but apparently this is based on a novel by Alexandra Bracken that I have not read, so you definitely don't have to read that prior to reading this graphic novel, but I'm sure it would help give some context. I wasn't confused, but it definitely was kind of interesting to dive right into this setting. The one I read after that was They Wish They Were Us by Jessica Goodman, and this is another murder mystery. So our main character, I can't remember her name, Jill. Well, that's what I thought. So during Jill's freshman year, her best friend was murdered by her best friend's boyfriend, and he confessed to the crime, and he was arrested, case closed, nobody asked any questions. But now, during Jill's senior year, she got these anonymous messages saying that the guy who confessed is actually innocent. And so she tries to ignore it and just go on with her life, but she keeps getting these messages, and she decides that she really needs to find out what happened to her best friend and find out the truth because she just can't rest until she does. I wasn't expecting there to be a secret society element to this, but even though it takes place at a high school, there is like kind of a secret society, and it's really interesting the things that happen. So that matched up with the murder mystery we're trying to figure out was definitely an interesting pairing, and I did enjoy this book. It's not really my favorite murder mystery, but it was pretty enjoyable. After that, I decided to take a break from fantasy and move toward a paranormal romance that I've been dying to read, and that was Rapsonic by Thalassa, and I've heard so much about this book. It's so hyped up, and I was kind of nervous to read it, and it was relatively enjoyable, but I was honestly kind of disappointed. I expected it to be this really dark paranormal romance, and it definitely had those elements, but I really wasn't that invested in the romance. I thought it was going to be like this slow burn, enemies to lovers, especially because it's the first book in a series, but the transition between their like hate to love was super quick and seamless, and I didn't really enjoy how quick of a transition it was. I do think the world building in here has potential, but it wasn't really explored as much as it could have been. So that also was kind of disappointing. It's pretty enjoyable, but I don't really think it's as great as everybody hypes it up to be. And then book number 14, which is the last one I'm going to tell you guys about in this clip, is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This is another book that was super hyped up. I feel like I saw it everywhere for so long, and I was really excited to finally read it, and this one did not disappoint. I loved this. This is probably my favorite murder mystery and thriller that I've read during this month so far. This is another murder mystery that takes place at a high school, and basically this girl, Andy Bell, was murdered, and her boyfriend, Sal, ends up confessing to the crime and then committing suicide. So everybody just accepts the fact that he's the one that did it and moves on with their life. But this year, Pip, our main character, has to do this capstone project, and she decides to dig into the case a little bit more because something has never really sat right with her. She has some questions, and she doesn't think people really did enough to investigate what really happened. And so she ends up really digging deep and diving into every single detail of this case, interviewing people, you know, so much to figure out what really happened back then. And along this journey, she's getting like these threats and is basically putting herself at risk while she's digging into this case. So that's the thriller element of it. It is so good, so captivating. It's probably like the best page turner I've read in a while. But my favorite part of this book was the way it used mixed media. I had such a fun time looking at all the different things that were included. We have these like logs that she's typing into her capstone project. We have text between characters. We have transcripts of the interviews that she's doing with different witnesses and different people she has on her suspect list. Here's some of those text messages. We also have a document that is redacted in certain parts. We have a map that she draws trying to figure out what happened. We have this little, I don't know, like a little chart she draws trying to figure out the suspects and how they're all connected. Like so many things in here. I'm sure I'm forgetting some. There's also like some planner pages from Andy's planner and just so much. There's so many cool elements that really added to the story, and it really made me feel like I was trying to solve this case right alongside Pip, and I really, really loved it. So I really understand why people have raved about this book, and I will definitely be continuing the series because it ended on a cliffhanger, and it's just so, so good. Definitely read this one. Okay, so I'm going to take a break from filming for a while and dive back into reading. I'm not really sure which book I'm going to pick up next. I ended up writing the rest of the books I still have on my TBR for this month on little slips of paper and putting them in a TBR jar. So that's what I've been using to help pick my next book because I'm too indecisive. So I guess we will both be surprised in the next clip with which book I ended up reading. It has been probably 2 days since I've updated you guys, so I should probably go through all of the books that I've been needing to update you guys on. I did not just read these in 2 days, I've just been really behind. So the first one that I need to tell you guys about is These Witches Don't Burn by Isabel Sterling. And for some reason, I didn't really think I would enjoy this book too much, but I really loved it. So this is about a girl named Hannah, and she is an elemental witch. And basically, she is just trying to get through high school after this really bad breakup with her ex, Veronica. Yes, Veronica. But all of a sudden, they discover this terrifying blood ritual, and all this dark magic starts appearing throughout town. And also, the town they live in is Salem, so I feel like that's an important detail. But basically, all these things keep happening, and none of the other members of their coven or any of the adults in their coven really believe them. So they take it upon themselves to work together and figure out what's happening and protect all the people that they care about. And there's also a new girl named Morgan in here, and Hannah. They hit it off, and it's basically really hard to try to date somebody new while all of this witchy stuff is going on. So it's really fun, and it follows girls who are like high school age, but also there's some darker elements in here as well. So it's a really good balance, and I feel like it's good for people of all ages for that reason. After that, I ended up reading You've Reached Sam by Dustin Tao, which I have a full review of on this channel, so I will link that for you guys. But this was an ARC that I got from NetGalley, and I did not expect to be approved for this because it doesn't even come out until November 9th. So by the time you guys watch this, it still probably isn't even out yet. So go watch that review for more of my thoughts. But this is such a beautifully written book, and also it's just so sad. If you're going to read this, be prepared to be heartbroken. But, like, it's written so well that, like, you don't even care that your heart's breaking. Like, you want to feel those emotions. I was so emotionally invested in this book and so heartbroken right along with the characters. It's so raw and honest, and I cried, like, multiple times, which usually does not happen. But I really enjoyed this book, and as far as I know, it's Dustin Tao's debut novel, so that's great in itself. It's, like, a contemporary with magical realism in it, and it's really cool. I didn't even tell you what it's about. It's about this girl named Julie, and her and Sam met up and like fell in love. They had all these plans together, but suddenly Sam ended up dying, and she's having a really hard time dealing with the grief that comes with all of that. So she calls his phone just to hear his voicemail and to hear his voice again, but he ends up picking up the phone, and it definitely changes everything. After going through all of the sad emotions with You've Reached Sam, I decided to completely switch gears and pick something a little creepier and that fits the Halloween aspect of this month. So I went with Hunting Prince Dracula by Carrie Maniscalco. And you guys know I love Carrie Maniscalco's writing, and I actually have a review of Stalking Jack the Ripper, which is the first book of this series, from last Hallow Reads, so I will link that for you guys. I feel like there's all kinds of videos that are going to be linked in the description, so go ahead and check those out. But this one's really fun. Like I said, it's the sequel to Stalking Jack the Ripper. I guess fun's not the right word. Don't listen to that. It's actually very creepy, and the vibe of this is very like cold and calculated, because this follows Audrey and Thomas, who I can't think of the right word for it, but essentially I guess they're the people that do like autopsies, kind of, if that's the right word. Like, they are given these cadavers, and it's their job to kind of cut into them and see what the cause of death was and solve the murder, essentially. So this takes place in Romania, and it's really interesting. Just like the historical fiction in this book is so well done. I don't usually read historical fiction. I also don't typically read mysteries, but I feel like this month I'm trying to expand my tastes, and it's done so well. I love Carrie Maniscalco's writing, and there is just like a touch of romance in here as well. Not as much as I usually get from the books I read, but still enough to be satisfying, and I really enjoyed it. There's good banter between the two main characters as they try to work together to solve this case. But overall, I really enjoyed it. It's a pretty thick book. It's much thicker than Stalking Jack the Ripper, but it's really well done, and I will definitely be continuing this series. After reading Hunting Prince Dracula, I felt like I needed to read an ebook because all the books on my TBR this month are physical books. I only had the NetGalley arc that I read, You've Reached Sam, and there's one other arc I have to read this month, but other than that, they were all physical books on my TBR, and I really missed using my Kindle, so I tried so hard to look for a paranormal romance that I could say fit the vibe of my TBR, and I finally picked one which was called Vein of Love. I can't remember who it's by. Vein of Love by R. Scarlett, and I had really high expectations for this because I don't usually read paranormal romances anymore, but I feel like it's something that's like a guilty pleasure for me and something I genuinely enjoy reading, and I had high expectations, but this one was just pretty average for me, I feel like. Basically, it's about this like 300-year-old contract where like 300 years ago she wasn't like a witch, but essentially she is somebody that has magical powers, and her family couldn't protect her and she couldn't protect them. So they basically made a contract with these demons to say that they would protect the humans and that family, but then the girl with the magical powers will essentially be theirs. Like, I don't know if they would be betrothed or what would happen, but basically she would have to go with the demons. And before she could do that, she was burned at the stake, and so now the demons have been waiting for somebody else in that family to show magical powers to fulfill the contract. So our main character is finally the girl that has those powers, and she has no idea what's happening, but all of a sudden on her birthday, this demon shows up and basically says that they're betrothed and she is essentially his, and it has such promise. And I expected there to be a ton of smut and spice, but there was really not, which is so weird because he's an incubus and he gets his energy and his strength through like physical touch and intimacy. So I expected there to be a ton of spice, and maybe there will be in the rest of the series. I think there's 3 more books in the series, but there was like none. Like, I think they only kissed like twice. Sorry if you can hear the train. I have the window open. But basically, no spice, so I was very disappointed with that. I think the world building has potential, and I definitely will continue the series, I think, if I'm looking for another paranormal romance, but it wasn't giving me what I really was looking for. Oh, also, I wanted to show you guys these candles I got the other day. I was going to show you when I was talking about Hunting Prince Dracula, but these are candles for Kingdom of the Wicked and Kingdom of the Cursed. I have Wrath and Amelia, and I am obsessed. They smell so good, and these are 2 of my favorite characters of all time, so I was so excited to get them. Amelia's smells like amber, herbs, soft florals, and sisterly love. And it smells so good. Also, it's like beautiful. There's like glitter on top. I love it. These are from Flicker Wicks, which I've talked about before because I have a bunch of candles from Caraval and Once Upon a Broken Heart. And then Wrath's literally just smells like somebody's cologne. And it smells so good, and it also is really pretty. His smells like spice, gold daggers, and dark bargains. It also smells like something else, but I can't pronounce this word, so if you guys can see that, maybe you'll know what it is. I can't say it, so we're just going to pretend that's not there. But other than that, the other book that I've read is Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson, and this one took me way too long to read. I mean, not while I was reading it, but I've had this book for a long time on my shelf, and it took me way too long to finally pick it up. But once I started, I could not put it down. I really loved it. The world building is really cool because basically there's a whole bunch of like grimoires that need to be protected in these like great libraries, and our main character is a girl who is an orphan, and she ended up being raised in one of the great libraries, and for some reason she is able to like connect with these books, and nobody really knows why. But all of a sudden, one of the books goes missing, and she ends up being the main suspect in this case, and her whole life is kind of, like, not destroyed, but she's basically going through a lot. And she ends up having to work with a sorcerer, and she grew up to believe that sorcerers were evil, but she ends up having to work with Nathaniel, who is the sorcerer, and his servant, essentially, to try to figure out what's happening and kind of make themselves seem innocent again. That's not the right word, but do you know what I'm saying? Like, clear their names. Trying to clear their names and stop who's stealing the books. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm really struggling. But it was really good. World building was great. Also, there is romance. I'm pretty sure this is a standalone. It definitely read like a standalone. So I love that. Typically with standalones, I feel like not enough of the world is explored, but I felt like it was the perfect amount. I really enjoyed getting to know the different kinds of creatures in here and all the different kinds of grimoires and how that worked. So I thought that was really well done. There are some battle scenes in here as well. And the only thing is, I felt like I was left with some questions at the end still. There were a couple things I still would have liked to know. And that also happened to me with An Enchantment of Ravens, which Margaret Rogerson also wrote. So it's like, I enjoyed both those books so much, but I still like wanted more. And maybe that's just shows that it's a good standalone and it left me wanting more, but at the same time I wish there were a couple things that were answered in here that I didn't get. And then the book that I'm currently reading is Even If We Break. Oh my gosh, I can't say this name. I know it's Camp, but I don't know what the first name is, and I'm so sorry. But I think I'm gonna DNF it. And basically this book, I'm just going to read what it says on the back. It says, 5 friends go to a cabin. 4 of them are hiding secrets. 3 years of history bind them. 2 are doomed from the start. 1 person wants to end this. No one is safe. Are you ready to play? And I thought I was. I thought this sounded cool. This is actually a gift from my uncle for my birthday last year, I think. And I finally decided to pick it up. This seemed like the perfect time. It feels like a thriller, a mystery. Seems like there's some interesting ties between some of our characters. I thought I was going to love this. I'm only like 100 pages in right now, but I am confused. This entire book is very confusing to me. It is told from different perspectives of the 5 friends, which I usually really enjoy, but it's not really helping me understand the story at all. Essentially, they are like going to this cabin because they play like this game where they've created this magical world in their heads, and they do like these murder mystery things, or one of them plans the whole thing, plants clues in like a room, and they have to figure it out. It's kind of like an escape room mixed with like Clue, essentially, is what I thought it was. But apparently it's not like that, because all of a sudden they are randomly rolling dice and doing things like that, and some elements read like it's supposed to actually be happening. Like, the magic isn't real, but some of the scenes act as if the magic is real. And also they all have code names when they're playing the game, and it's just really confusing because they use the code names so early on, you still don't really know the characters, and all of a sudden they're being called something different, and like there's magic happening, and it's very confusing. It's like trying to learn 2 different sets of characters and 2 different worlds at the same time. And I'm not enjoying it enough to feel like I want to finish it. There's nothing about this that's really drawing me in, and I know it feels really harsh, but then also because I wasn't liking it, I checked Goodreads to see people's reviews, and it only has like a 2.9 on Goodreads, and that's like the lowest for any book I've ever read, I think. So I think I'm just going to DNF it. I don't DNF books a lot, and maybe it gets better. I don't know. For that reason, I'm not going to give it a rating on Goodreads. I'm just going to DNF it. But I am counting this toward my 31 books because I did read a good chunk of it. So this is book number 20, which means whatever book I read today, I will be on track for the first time since I started this. So I'm very excited. I think my next book is going to be The Beautiful by Renee Audier. This is another book I've had for so long. I don't know if you heard that beep, but I'm also baking brownies right now, and I'm very excited that they're done. But just real quick, this is essentially like a vampire novel, and it takes place in, I think, 1920s. Nope. It takes place in the 1800s in New Orleans. So I'm really excited to see what that's about, and I will let you guys know my thoughts. I feel like I haven't seen you guys in so long. It is now October 28th. I cannot remember the last time I updated this vlog. I have read 26 books, and since it's the 28th, I'm still 2 books behind. I really don't think I'm going to like meet my goal of 31 books, but This is still the most books I've ever read in a month with 26, so I still feel like it's a really successful month. I'm still going to really try to get to 31, but there's only a couple days left and I have some other things I need to get done, so I'm not sure it's going to happen. Also, Saturday, October 30th is my 4-year anniversary with my fiance, so I'm probably not going to read too much that day. So I feel like I'm already losing one of the days this month, but that is not the point. Let me update you guys with the other books that I've read since I saw you last. The first one is The Beautiful by Renee Audier. This takes place in the late 1800s in New Orleans, and it follows this girl who just moved there from Paris, and I think she joins like a convent essentially. But she ends up going to like this club, like this underground club kind of thing, and catching the eye of Sebastian, who is the leader of that club, and they kind of keep bumping into each other, but all of a sudden a girl's body is found in his club, and then another body turns up in town, and there ends up being a serial killer essentially, and our main character has to try to figure out what's happening. And it's definitely kind of spookier than I was expecting. I mean, it sounds scary, but the whole ambiance was definitely a little spookier, and I honestly kind of loved it. I love reading any books that take place in New Orleans because I've always wanted to travel there, and this is like a completely different side of the city from what I've seen in other books, and I love it. It's like haunting, but like mesmerizing still, and there's a decent amount of action. I loved the historical fiction element. Historical fiction is like hit or miss for me, but I really enjoyed it in here. And there's also a paranormal element as well that I'm going to be honest, I don't quite understand fully. I feel like the world building was really good in here, but it was also still a tiny bit confusing, at least for me. So I definitely, if I do plan on continuing the series, I would hope that I would be able to understand it more. Also, the romance was pretty good. There was a lot of chemistry between the two characters, but I felt like it was a little rushed at the end. It was like there was a lot of tension, but then all of a sudden they were like all in, and I really like a slower progression throughout, so that was a little bit disappointing for me. But overall, I ended up giving this 3.5 stars, and I feel like that's still good enough that I might continue the series. I'm definitely still intrigued by this world. The next book I picked up was The Ravens by Cass Morgan and Danielle Page. And this was one that I was holding off on for a while because for some reason I didn't think I would enjoy it, but I was looking for another witchy read and finally gave in, and I'm so glad that I did because I genuinely enjoyed this book. This basically is about a sorority of witches, and it is dual perspective. Both of our main characters are women in this sorority, and one of them is, I think, a junior. The other one is a freshman just joining the sorority. And so you get two very different perspectives, but it's really great. I feel like the magic is really interesting because there's a lot of different kinds of witches, and so you get to see them kind of, well, especially the one that just joins the sorority, you get to see her figure out what her powers are and figure out how to use them, and it's really interesting just to learn about what each different kind of witch can do. I really loved that. There are a lot of different types of relationships in this book. We have some romance in here. Obviously, sisterhood is a big part of this because it follows a sorority, and then there's also a mother-daughter relationship that we get to see. So I really enjoyed all those different dynamics and seeing how the story affected them. I thought that was really great. Also, there were some great plot twists in here. There was one that I thought was supposed to be the plot twist, and I kind of expected it, but then there was another one right after that I was not expecting, so it just kept getting better and better, especially the last chunk of this book was like packed with plot twists, and I really enjoyed it. This was a lot more intense than I was expecting. So if you're looking for a really great witchy book, I would definitely recommend this one. I know that I plan on reading the sequel. I think it comes out early next year. I think it's called The Monarchs, and I'm super excited to continue because this really surprised me. I didn't expect to enjoy it this much. This next one was super hyped up, so I was kind of nervous to start it, but I'm really glad that I did because I fell in love with this book. And that is Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. You guys have probably seen this everywhere. I feel like everybody has talked about it at some point, but it did not disappoint. In fact, it was even better than I could have imagined. And this honestly is kind of a comfort read, I feel like. There's something really comforting about it, and I can't even explain why because I don't think the subject matter is super comforting. I think it's mainly the relationships we get to see in here. This, if you don't know, is about a trans boy who is trying to prove to his family that he belongs and deserves to take on the role of a brujo in his family's, not clan, it's not a coven, but basically they can do magic. So the men in the family are able to essentially, I can't remember what it's called, but there's some item they get to have, like a dagger or something like that, where they get to sever the tie that is keeping spirits in the mortal world and send them into the afterlife. And then the females have like healing abilities. So our main character is a trans boy trying to, you know, prove to his family that he deserves it just as much as anybody, and he should be able to go through that rite of passage and gain those powers. And there are trigger warnings in here for people misgendering him and using his dead name, so I would be very aware of that. Those moments are very heartbreaking, and I wanted to climb in this book and like yell at the people that were doing that to him because it was so awful. Like, I felt so bad for him. But what I really loved about this book is the way that it meshed together this really cool magical family and also some like contemporary issues with seeing what our trans main character had to deal with. And we also have some other characters that essentially, it's not really a gang, but they don't really have any family members to care for them or anywhere to turn to, and they just kind of have like a found family together. And I don't know, there's just, I didn't expect it to be such a contemporary element mixed into here, and I really enjoyed it. We also have amazing friendships between, I can't remember her name right now, Maritza and Yadriel. They were great friends, and also a really cute romance that I definitely shipped. I was really excited to see them together, and I loved every second of this book. After Cemetery Boys is where I realized I was still falling behind, so I decided to read something super quick, and I picked up Beetle and the Hollow Bones by Eliza Lane, and this is actually a middle grade graphic novel. I think it's for ages 8 to 12, so it was definitely a really quick read, but it was also a little bit more intricate than I was expecting. This follows a goblin and her friend who is called Blob Ghost. And basically, Blob Ghost lives at this mall in town, and I can't remember the goblin's name right now. I don't know why it's... Oh, Beetle. Duh, it's in the title. Okay. So Beetle always goes to the mall to hang out with Blob Ghost, and she wants to take Blob Ghost out of the mall so they can hang out together and like live together and be best friends. But Blob Ghost is, for some reason, trapped in the mall. And in order to figure out a way to get Blob Ghost out, they have to basically like solve this, not solve the mystery, but figure out how to get him out because there is somebody else who is trying to tear down the mall. So Beetle is trying to get Blob Ghost out before that happens, and she potentially loses her friend forever. I just want to start by saying that Blob Ghost is the most adorable character I've probably ever read about. Looking at some of these illustrations of Blob Ghost, I couldn't even express my emotions. So adorable. I kept showing my fiance because they made me so emotional, and Blobghost went through all the emotions during this journey, and I was right there with him because I was very emotionally attached. The illustrations in here are very bright and eye-catching, and I loved them. This is probably one of the best graphic novels I've ever read. I'm still getting into the genre, so if you have any graphic novel recommendations, please let me know below, whether it's middle grade, young adult, anything like that. I love graphic novels, and I'm really trying to read more and more of them, so let me know your suggestions. And because this is a little bit more intricate than I was expecting, I feel like this is honestly great for people of all ages. If you're looking for a fun, festive graphic novel, especially during fall, I feel like this is perfect for everybody. After reading such an adorable graphic novel, I felt like I was finally ready to tackle my first horror book. So I decided to pick up The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein by Kirsten White. And I've had this on my shelf for a little over a year. I got it right after Halloween last year, so I was saving it for this time of year, and I'm glad that I did. I feel like the ambiance of this book really fits this spookier time period, but I was definitely terrified to start it because I've never read a horror book before, and I was worried it was going to be really, really scary. And thankfully it wasn't super scary. It was definitely disturbing and very creepy and haunting at times, but I wasn't like super scared, so it was definitely a little easier to get through than I was expecting. The first, I think that's split into 3 parts, at least the first part for sure, was really slow for me to get into. It also feels like historical fiction. I'm not sure if it technically is, I can't remember the genres, but it definitely is set in an older time period. So between that and these characters weren't very emotional, they were very calculated and cold. So between all of that, there wasn't really much for me to connect with at first. So I didn't enjoy it too much, but I wanted to push through because it's a pretty small book compared to some of the other ones I read. And also I really wanted to stick out my first horror book. And it definitely got better. The second half of this book definitely saved it for me, and it definitely was more of what I expected from a horror book. But honestly, it was just so cold and creepy that by the time I got to the second half where it started picking up, I didn't want to put it down because I was very curious where it was going to go. And then last but not least, I read Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson, and this is a mystery. I've been really loving mysteries this month, which you could probably tell from this vlog, and this is one I was really, really excited for. It basically follows this academy, and this academy was created for people that kind of, I don't want to say they're smarter, but they have a certain topic or hobby that they really fixate on and they're really good at. So our main character, Stevie, is really interested in true crime, and she really is interested in trying to solve cold cases. So at this academy, after it was founded in the 1930s, the founder's wife and daughter were kidnapped, and there were ransom notes that were left and signed Truly Devious, and you get to see flashbacks of that happening. And in present day, our main character Stevie decides to go to this academy specifically to try to solve this case. And so we have these dual timelines where you get to find out things about the case from the flashbacks, and then you also have present day where Stevie is talking about the case and meeting these other people at the academy, and then weird things start happening. So there's a lot to try to figure out, but I really enjoyed it, and Stevie is such a cool main character because she is very smart and she is very observant. She picks up on a lot just by talking to somebody or looking at their stuff. She can find things out about them that they haven't even told her yet, and she's very calculated and reserved, which I really enjoyed. I feel like she was a really cool main character to read about, and she also deals with anxiety and has panic attacks, so I thought that representation was very good and also very relatable. I feel like I don't read a lot of books with mental health rep, at least not as many as I would like to, so that was an element I really enjoyed. and I still don't really think I've solved the mystery. Stevie really hasn't either, and I kind of love that because this is a trilogy, so I love the fact that there's room for growth and we find out a little bit and get to make some progress, but there's still so many unanswered questions and a huge cliffhanger at the end of this. So I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it, and I do plan on continuing this series. I also should have mentioned that I filmed a reading vlog of these last 4 books. It's my Halloween reading vlog, so I will make sure to link that for you guys. But I was trying to cram as many books as possible into a vlog over a couple days because I'm really trying to reach my goal of 31 books, but as I said earlier, I really don't think it's going to happen. But if you would like to see more of my thoughts and my journey while I was reading those 4 books, please go ahead and click that link. But I will update you guys probably Saturday, the 30th, hopefully, because tomorrow I have a long day at work, and then I'm going to my fiance's brother's high school football game. He's in marching band and he's a senior, so we are trying to go to some games. It's actually a playoff game, the first one that they've had in like so long. So that's what I will be doing tomorrow. I will try to read a book at work and on the way to the game, and then I have a NetGalley arc I'm going to be reading on my Kindle on the way home. So hopefully between all of that, I will get a couple more books knocked out, but we will see. Okay, everyone, it is officially Halloween, which means it's October 31st, and I did not end up reading 31 books this month. I read 27, which is still really good. That's still 5 more books than I did last month, and it's the most I've ever read in a month. Here is that little dry erase board that I showed you guys that has all of the potential books I was going to read this month, and I definitely accomplished a lot. I read a ton of really good fantasies and mysteries and thrillers and just festive graphic novels, and I had a lot of fun. The last book I read, book number 27, I don't think I updated you guys on, but that was The Babysitter's Coven by Kate Williams. And basically, it's this girl who is a babysitter along with her best friend, and a new girl moves to school and decides to join their club, and all of a sudden these weird things start happening, and they realize that the reason that they are babysitters is not just to make money, but it's also because they have powers and they're supposed to be able to protect the children and the world, essentially, from these paranormal creatures coming through a portal. I actually really enjoyed this one. I gave it 3.5 stars, and I feel like it's kind of like younger YA. Like, it's not like immature writing or anything like some other like young YA books. It's actually a pretty fun read, but it just feels like young YA because they're in high school, they're babysitting, and just like, I don't know, some of the conversations they have just feels a lot younger. So if that's not really your vibe, maybe don't read this one. But I think it's really fun that they are essentially witches and they have some pretty interesting powers. And I feel like the world building element is pretty interesting. It's not very complex. It actually takes a while for all of that to happen and for the girls to realize that they have powers. It took a little bit longer than I was expecting, but all of the like action that went with that was pretty cool, and it's really interesting to learn about like their lineage and how they got their powers and how all of that works. So it's definitely really interesting. I'm very intrigued. I would probably continue the series. I'm not sure if I would buy this and put it on my shelf because this is a library copy, but I did enjoy it enough to continue, and I probably will read the next book next Hallow Reads. So I thought it was pretty fun. Like I said, 3.5 stars. I feel like this was a good one to end the month with. And I really thought I could get to 31 books, but I feel like I said, 27 is good. Hopefully you guys enjoyed coming along this journey with me. It was definitely, you know, a very lofty goal. But I feel like it was pretty fun, and hopefully you guys found some new fall reads. I feel like I went through so many books this month, But if you enjoyed this, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. I would really, really appreciate it. And if you do subscribe, please click the notification bell so you know when I upload next. Thank you guys so much for watching. I can't wait to see you in my next video.